Very cheerful. My parents didn't believe in toys.
Hey Ghost Heads, it's Heidi from Channeling Spirits, and today we'll be discussing the extensive history of Dr. Egon Spengler, depicted by the immortal Harold Ramis. For this comprehensive character study, we will be utilizing works that are definitely considered canon, as well as a variety of other media, but still illustrating a holistic view of this character. For simplicity's sake, we'll be using Harold Ramis's actual birthday, since there has never been a canonical date given. The earliest information that we are given is in a deleted ending of Ghostbusters II, where it is revealed that Egon's grandparents immigrated from Ostrov, Poland.
Spengler? Weird name. Try to make the best of that.
Based on evidence from the novelization, Ghostbusters the Supernatural Spectacular, we know that Egon was born in a quiet suburb of Cleveland, Ohio. This makes sense since Ray mentions in Cry Uncle,
he went back to the Midwest to do research in his uncle's lab.
Harold Ramis himself was born on November 21st, 1944 in Chicago, Illinois.
Sweet home!
Chicago.
Woo! Chicago! Extreme Ghostbusters somewhat confirms this since the episode Back in the Saddle mentions,
I'm so glad you let me take you out for your birthday, Egon.
and talks about Thanksgiving coming up.
So, Busters, I'm making up a shopping list for our Thanksgiving dinner next Thursday, and...
In 1997, when Extreme Ghostbusters premiered, Thanksgiving was November 27th, roughly a week before November 21st. Given the picture found in Ghostbusters the video game, we know that Egon is an uncle. This is a nod to the fan-made films of the Denver Ghostbusters who have an Ed Spengler. There was also a non-canon appearance of Harold Ramis in the 1990 Earth Day special as Egon's twin brother, Egon Spengler, the president of Wastebusters. Perhaps Egon is Ed's father. Egon's mother was shown in the Real Ghostbusters, but never named. We also know his mother used to call him Spookums.
Spookums?
What kind of name is that?
My mother used to call me Spookums.
Spookums. Although we never meet Egon's father, we do meet his uncle Cyrus, who, like Egon, is a scientist.
Scientists and scholars run in my family.
And Egon is encouraged at a young age to pursue those disciplines.
So look at this, the microscope I got for my 3rd birthday.
Ed Naha's Ghostbusters II states Egon has grown up idolizing two men, Albert Einstein and Star Trek's Mr. Spock. Neither of them were party animals. There are other further anecdotes of Egon having a brother and his preoccupation with science. In the Supernatural Spectacular, a young Egon is mentioned to have 3 concentric rings from the Plasticville houses in his brother's Lionel train set as ingredients for a compact explosive. In Ghostbusters 2, Egon once again implies having had at least one sibling, noting,
You mean you never even had a slinky?
We had part of a slinky, but I straightened it.
According to Ghostbusters Legion Number 4, Egon built an internal combustion engine at the age of 6. Another story of Spengler's youth comes from the Real Ghostbusters as they battled the actual boogeyman.
When I was a child, the boogeyman would come out of my closet. He's the reason I started investigating the supernatural. I wanted to find a way to stop him.
But according to Ghostbusters Year 1, Dr. Spengler got into parapsychology and ghosts because he didn't believe there are things man isn't meant to know. Ghosts were simply the first thing he could conclusively prove. We also know that Egon's propensity for scientific aspirations was fostered beyond a microscope, but also,
I had a chemistry set.
it's difficult to know when exactly Egon's fondness for junk food arose.
Tell him about the Twinkie.
What about the Twinkie?
He is seen constantly snacking and being rewarded with a candy bar and even uses a Twinkie to explain psychokinetic levels in the city. This might have resulted as a rebellion from his strict upbringing. I know all about that. According to Ghostbusters, the Supernatural Spectacular, among the many texts he read was the mysteries of latent abnormality, electrical applications of the psychosexual drive, your friend the fungus, astral projections as an untapped power source, and the Necronomicon.
Whoa. Wrong book.
Expanding on his novelization, Richard Mueller also mentioned in the Real Ghostbusters episode,
I have the largest ant farm in the state of Ohio.
and later in Mueller's novelization, he mentions Egon spent time observing the mating rituals of teenagers, which he devised a complex formula that calculated the exact number of venereal diseases, which he posted on a high school bulletin board. By the autumn of 1962, Egon definitely would have entered college, though other sources insinuate that he may have begun much earlier. We know that academics continued to be a focal point for his parents.
In college, I once got an A- on a test, and my parents wouldn't talk to me for a week.
Given that timeline, by 1966, Egon would have completed his undergraduate degree, probably one of the dozen degrees seen in 2021.
You're a genius.
In Ghostbusters Afterlife, the art and making of the movie by Ozzy Inguanzo, we see he graduated on October 29th, 1969, from Columbia University with a degree in psychology focusing on psychobiology. Considering he read Your Friend the Fungus and that
I collect spores, molds, and fungus.
the novelization elaborated, he also maintained a rooftop fungus farm. It goes into greater detail on why Dr. Spengler is so interested in fungi. He reveals to Janine that his rationale is that he believes they will become the food of the future.
Trust the fungus.
At some point, possibly to pay for his schooling, Egon became a licensed coroner.
Egon used to be a licensed coroner.
No kidding. It's just a hobby now.
And on May 4th, 1972, Egon graduated with another degree from New York University in parapsychology. Later that year, Egon met Peter Venkman in a women's studies class at Columbia, which he was mistakenly assigned to. Peter convinced him to stay to teach him to be comfortable with people. In the winter, Peter would introduce him to Ray Stantz.
Whoa, I introduced you. If it weren't for me, you never would have met. Now that's gotta be worth something.
Egon mentioned to Ray that he had already been working on devices to track and measure alternate forms of sentient energy. One of these devices no doubt became the PKE meter. That autumn, Egon started his second PhD in parapsychology in the pilot program from Columbia University. Peter would enter the same program, which was noted that he got through graduate school solely by Egon's assistance. The Supernatural Spectacular also explains he made an attempt at a death ray and made a sonic gun which did little to people but set off soft drinks at 100 yards. Peter one night drunkenly took it to a Coca-Cola warehouse, and Egon quickly dismantles it after that. By 1975, Egon would have received his second doctorate in parapsychology and begun his work as an assistant professor. At one point, he also attempted self-trepanation,
This reminds me of the time you tried to drill a hole through your head. Remember that?
which was legitimately believed to increase latent psychic tendencies. Making Ghostbusters attributed the inspiration to John Lilly, but there is no evidence he attempted self-trepanation. He was actually famous for giving LSD to dolphins in an attempt to teach them English.
If we start giving acid to dolphins, I bet they'll talk to us.
No, seriously, that really happened.
It's always the quiet ones.
The real inspiration for self-trepanation may have been Bart Hughes, a Dutch librarian who championed the movement. Regardless, Peter thwarted this attempt.
That would have worked if you hadn't stopped me.
Egon was also the first scientist to hypnotize a hamster by subjecting it to low-frequency radio waves. By 1979, he would have been given the position of associate professor at Columbia University. With tenure, Egon may very well have been able to continue at Columbia in physics, but it's clear his heart, or brain, wanted to pursue something else. Never satisfied, Egon graduated from MIT with a degree in nuclear engineering on June 26, 1980. His doctorate in physics at MIT was mentioned as far back as the September 30th, 1983 draft and in the Supernatural Spectacular.
What kind of scientist was Grandpa?
The kind that repels loved ones.
Maybe a physicist?
Sure.
In 1980, he met a woman, maybe a science chick who really dug his large cranium.
I think they're more interested in my epididymis.
On January 21st, 1981, he had a daughter, Callie. For whatever reason, Egon wasn't involved in her upbringing.
He's not nuts.
Let's see what happens when we take away the puppy.
Well, then he's an asshole.
Whether Egon married Callie's mother is also unknown, but she kept the Spengler name.
Callie Spengler.
Callie was raised in Chicago and stayed in Illinois until moving to Somerville. Despite his absence, he watched her grow from afar. Egon kept meticulous notes on her growing up, and we see various years marked including 1983, 84, and 87. Jason Reitman also confirmed that Callie Spengler was alive during the events of Ghostbusters II, though obviously not seen. By the autumn of 1984, the three men went on to successfully start a lucrative enterprise. Egon Spengler saved the world several times, and his final act on Earth was sacrificing himself in secret and alone.
Listen, I'm usually very psychic, and I have a terrible feeling that something awful's gonna happen to you. I'm afraid you're gonna die.
In the August 5th, 1983 draft, when faced with death, he tells Janine, "I'm not afraid. I see the universe as a living organism, every particle of which is constantly transforming from matter to energy. You and I are just tiny parts of that organism, like two bacteria living on a rotting speck of dust floating in an infinite void." And while it's easy to diminish Ghostbusters as merely a comedy, Harold Ramis, co-writer and star behind Egon, thought differently.
I was concerned throughout this whole process that the physics of it makes sense somehow, that intelligent people wouldn't look at what we were doing and think it was totally ridiculous. I did a lot of rationalizing when it came to the Stay Puft Man. Morally, no one else cared that much. I was the only one who kept agonizing about what it all meant. What does the universe really look like? And is it possible this could actually happen? As bizarre as it was, I wanted a film to say something about life, even if it was subliminal. I knew if I could just harmonize it in my own mind, I'd feel a lot better about it. Finally, I found some symbolism in the fact that the whole world of the paranormal seems to represent people's abstract fears. People need a place to put all the nameless dread, and so they put in a ghost and things unseen. But the real source of that dread is in very real things like violence and death and economic uncertainty. So it seemed to me very appropriate that when our monster finally appeared, it turned out to be a marshmallow. That literally and figuratively, our biggest fear of the unknown was as insubstantial as marshmallow.
This is big, Peter. This is very big. Yo! I think this building should be condemned. Sorry, Beckman. I'm terrified beyond the capacity for rational thought. You have a weak electrochemical bond! I have a radical idea. We'd like to get a sample of your brain tissue. We'll cross the streets. I blame myself for the atomic weight of cobalt, 58.9. I'm always serious. Egon! Friend is dead. Yes, have so. Very good, Louis. Short but pointless. Ray. We'd like to shoot the monster. Could you move, please? Not necessarily. There's definitely a very slim chance we'll survive.
A mission, my friend.